afternoon. Sharon, I guess you could just take roll call from this here. And this is the Joint Planning and Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Friday, August 15th. I said it's noon. And can we get the approval of the agenda? Someone want to make a motion?
For the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Oster.
I second it.
Shelley seconds. Thank you.
John on planning.
I'm on planning.
I think that another road.
Where's that guy?
Okay, so anybody from the public online? I don't see anybody here. See nobody online, see nobody in the room. Ask for approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Seconded.
Second.
All right, approval of the minutes. So we got the vote of the joint planning committee meetings and the finance and audit committee. June 12th and July 15th.
I read the planning minutes and I moved to approve those. They look fine. I was there.
To approve the finance minutes.
Since your chair, I'll second it.
Okay, so we got both the finance and the planning committees, so they're actually sharing it and they've been approved separately, so.
Yep.
Okay, we'll go right on to old business or project updates, and I'll turn this over to Lisa, who's online.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So for the project updates, the ground floor asbestos abatement project, we are like so close to done. I have 1 foot up for the happy dance. There's just a few minor flooring things like welding a couple seams in a couple rooms that need to be completed. So we're hoping every day that that gets completed, and that will be great. The Wildflower Court fuel tank project, the new tank, as it says there, was received on the 30th, and they were planning to resume work on the 4th. And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure whether that happened or not, but I'm thinking it probably did. The Wildflower Court sidewalk replacement. That's our thing. What do we have here? They are on site, and we had a change order, and sorry, this is I prepared this a little bit while ago. The RFP one was currently awaiting approval, but I believe, Mark, if you're in the room, or Kim, that approval was made and we're moving forward with that work. Since this, yeah, okay. And we don't have anything bidding yet, although we are super close to bidding the Wildflower Court fire alarm replacement project, and that has been taking a little longer than we had hoped to get out, but we've actually caught some things that needed to be revised in the bid documents, which is going to make it a much better bid package to get us a more accurate price from the beginning, and hopefully make it so there's less or no change, less change orders. So we're getting there. The ED addition and renovation reduced scope project. I was actually working on this all morning. We have our Seymour, who is Cornerstone, basically on board, although we're still kind of going back and forth on the contract with them, and it's nothing big. It's just the contract is going to include all the normal Division 1 specs, which is things like how many days you have to answer an RFI, and I don't see, nothing is insurmountable. It's just making sure we're all on the same page. And we have I don't know if I knew when I made this update, but we now have a kickoff meeting with our CMAR contractor scheduled for the 19th, which is Tuesday. And we also just received the 35% estimate from the contractor. We already had one that we had done, the designers, by a professional estimator. So part of that meeting will be looking at those two combined, but at a, like, we just got that estimate late last night and I did like a 1-minute overview of it, and it looks like their estimate is in line with our budget, which is fabulous. So that's where we are. And we are doing, the designer and the contractor are both on board to get the design far enough along so that we could hopefully break ground in the spring of 2026. And the idea of completion in summer of 2027. Any questions on that? And then kind of on hold is that surge protection phase arc flash circuit breaker, and it's partly officially on hold and partly just summer is so busy with our project managers that attention hasn't been really on that to make it start moving somewhere again. But as summer comes to an end, we'll start looking back at that. Any questions on any of that?
Any questions for Lisa?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I do have a question. It's not specifically on this, but when we were around behind the hospital yesterday, whatever that was, I was looking up at the roof of Wildflower Court. I was thinking about how that building is now, about 20 years, 25 years old. And we got a condition assessment on, some of the major components of that building, like the roof.
I'm not sure if you're in the room, Mark, and mostly I would say I can get back to you on that, but I think that there was a condition assessment done when it was hospital was taking over it.
There was an assessment, like the roof has been identified as needing replacement.
So it has.
There's a timeline, so I've never seen the condition.
All right, yeah, I don't remember seeing that either. Is that something that maybe you could?
We can dig it up. There's a few more that are kind of long range in the planning, so we pull some of that together.
Max and I were on the acquisition of that modified port. Like I said, I don't remember seeing anything.
I think it had to be posted, to be my understanding.
Yeah. I mean, I even just missed it.
Did that position.
John's thinking you saw one.
No, I did not. I just remember it was discussed. There were a few things discussed and
Yeah,
at that time, that's hazy though.
so me and Mark have specifically talked about the roof.
It wasn't distributed to the board, but it was discussed, is my recollection as well as John's.
I know we dug really deep in the family practice building. Doing this stuff. So it'd be interesting to see it. I mean, first, could not have missed it.
Nope, that's it. We could get that report, it'd be great.
So I just, before we go on to the facility thing, I want to make one quick change on the agenda that's already been approved to kind of update it. On new business, I see they got C, the nurse call thing. We have that at C. I want to move that to A, the financials and the housing. After that, if that's okay with everybody. Seeing no objections, we'll do that. Okay, I'll turn this over to Joe for facility master plan update.
So the update's gonna be pretty quick. We did have an on-site over here in July. They're coming back week the 25th to conduct interviews. So they've been a subset of board members. Should be, they need to probably reach out to you to start coordinating some of those. They've started the interview process with some of the positions because there's some vacations happening. They're hoping to see if they can get that back that week. We need to have a few more on-site, so that's kind of the status as is.
So it's going to be the week of what?
25th.
Any other questions about that? And then, Madam President, are you completely with the master plan facility? What's going on? This is really high on your agenda.
It is, I am, and I'm scheduled to, my interview with them is scheduled for the 27th.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. No,
We don't in this committee lose.
yeah,
Okay.
I've been keeping on top of it.
Thanks.
Joe's, Joe and I discuss it pretty much every meeting that we're able to attend.
I mean, Kim and I talk about it, but we really don't talk very much about it, except that we know Joe's gonna do this update on it. We're not in the loop, so I just want to make sure. I know.
A lot of it is background work at this point. They're reviewing the material, mostly reviewing the materials that we have sent them and that they've been able to collect, is my understanding. And they've started the interview process.
Yeah, they got most information. We were still struggling with the city. Lisa might be able to answer the CAD drawings for our buildings. Do you know if those were supplied, Lisa, to Mark?
Funny, you should mention that. I don't know if Mark had some already, and I am working on collecting some more. So I know whatever Mark didn't have has not yet been supplied,
They were
but
missing
it's
a
on
few
my to-do list.
specific drawings that we believe the city had. And so with some of the transition, it's, and Lisa's answer.
Perfect. Any other questions about master plan? Lisa, thank you. Okay, we're gonna go through the aging remodel with Kim, and then Kim will just go right into the nurse call. Right?
Mr. Chair, Lisa gave the update I was gonna give, so I don't need to get that update. I
Okay.
just jumped into the nurse call.
Good.
So, we've talked to this committee before about, our aging call, nurse call system within, and I don't know if Mark's on, I can't see the screen now. But our current Duquesne, call system was, I guess, updated, or was put in place, I guess, in 2006. Then it was given a few years later, like a little upgrade, kind of stayed with like the 80s kind of functionality. So with the Duquesne system, it is end of life, meaning we can't get parts if something breaks. It's, there's a few spare parts here and there, but we can't order anything for that system. So when we started looking at, you guys remember a while back when we had the big power surge, the beds flew out. So some of those were replaced with Hill-Ron beds. And the current call light system won't integrate with the beds. So for example, the nurse call highlighted the little nurse figurine on the side, on the bed rails of the hospital beds. But when a patient hits it, it doesn't go anywhere because it's not integrated into the call light system, our current system, because can't do that. So we knew that had been a problem. Then the ED remodel that was on again, off again, on again, we started looking at those drawings and the square footage and the rooms that they were being added to those. And the current system wasn't going to be able to support the 2 extra rooms that needed call lights in the ER remodel later. So we reached out to Hill-Ron purposely because of the beds connection, so we could have integration, and had them come in and do an assessment of all the units that uses the call, either a nurse or either a staff assist, which sometimes like in lab, they don't need like, a call light, but they need like a code blue or a staff assist. And so they came through and tracked and did all the drawings of where we have our current call systems, just on the acute care side. Minus we had them take out infusion because right now that area is so small, it doesn't make sense to have, there's no way to have individual call lights, everybody in the same room. So they went through and gave us a quote. The original quote they came with had all the bells and whistles, which had the nurse locator on it. Just with the stem to stern call lights and the nurse locator badges. That quote came in at like almost 1.5 million. We went through and I went through and asked them to give me the bare bones model without the nurse locator. What does that look like? Can we have the nurse locator at another time? And then it also comes with a hands-free piece. So it's a little hands-free thing they call the Scotty, where if you're in a patient room, you can, you sign into your little device every day. And you say, hey, please, I need help in this room. Can you call Angela Davis? And then her little thing rings. And then he says, hey, this is Angela. And I'll say, hey, can you come in room 4? I need some help. That piece can be added later. It's still a little bit spendy. So that's something that we can do later. The quote that you have before you is just kind of the bare bones quote of what we need for our call light systems for all the areas minus infusion. IT and I, Chris Carnes and I need to sit down and look at this. We've asked some questions. It's Hill Ron Baxter. We've asked questions about like program manager. I think is one of them, or clinical consulting, where they have that with every floor. And it's a different dollar amount. And Chris feels like that's something that we can handle internally, so we're gonna plan the need. But the ask for this committee is to look at the quote, and then the action item attached is to approve this quote to in this committee and then send it to the full board.
Thank you, Kim.
Questions?
Were you anticipating that? Was that the number you were kind of anticipating?
When they originally gave us the quote, it was about 750-ish thousand, I think, and then it went up a little bit. But we've been working for years with this, and so I don't know if it's the cost of the merge or, you know, just inflation in general. But I was not expecting that amount, but 980, right, which is, I think that's the correct number. At least they gave me with 980 through the CIP.
So is that in our budget? It would be a CIP project, and so it would be ran through the city process on their side, so it'll come out of those funds. Yeah, and we had currently allocated on the project list this was on there, but it was slated for 980,000.
And there were a little over $1 million with the nurse call from there.
This is just a 1-1 replacement.
And I will say that the ED construction, they can still start, it would have to be phased. They can still do this, run the cabling and all of that, and they are anticipating the construction coming and not have to tear anything out. So they can lay all the cable and everything waiting for the construction to occur, and then they can just pull the cables through.
Is there a yearly monthly fee for this too?
I did not see
I
a
didn't see
monthly
it
fee
either.
because there's no monitoring because we do that all in-house. There might be maintenance agreements attached to it. And even some of that, there's like a software service agreement, it's 2,000, but there's some of the stuff we need to, I have asked for clarification, but he has not gotten back to me as of this meeting. So some of the stuff that we're gonna sit down with and clarify, like why is there a service maintenance agreement for every floor as opposed to just overall contractual? Some of the things that we don't quite understand. So we do have a plan to sit down with them in our IT to ask some of those questions, and hopefully that'll drop the price of the quote down a little bit.
We don't get a discount for having no wrong beds.
We do not.
So this is in your guys' opinion, this is a major safety concern, right?
It is a major safety concern, yeah. I mean, and you know, talking with Mark, and I think he's mentioned it in the committee before. You know, again, if something breaks, they have some things that they can make it work, but if a significant break happens, we'll find ourselves without a call system.
And then basically when we get our ED project, if we don't move forward with this and we get each project done, it's gonna be at least 2 rooms that won't be covered at all.
I mean, if we don't do this,
Right.
right? Because the current Duquesne system won't support it.
And what's the timeline to complete it?
For this, they want to start as soon as November, potentially, and get the cat cables run and do all that stuff. So, and then we'd have to do it in phases because at one point we would have potentially 2 different call systems. But they want to start in the ER in November.
You got in 3 months, 6 months.
I think they gave me a 6-month.
Okay.
They came and looked and like all the infrastructure they need as far as like running the cable. Like they're not gonna have to do any heavy work. It's just pulling all the cable, running it and making sure it goes in there. And so that will be the biggest.
So
Do you
I
have
just,
space? In the big one?
Yeah.
so I just want to point out something that this system, that the current system we have right now, I know it's on the narrative, but Kim said it was put in 2006. Actually, it was put in 1988.
Oh, okay.
And then they did an upgrade to the system in 2006. But still, it's 1988 technology that we have in these beds. So, you know, again, this is a major safety issue for us, and we need to stay in the 21st century. So, you know, the ask right now is for this committee to move it forward to full board for approval.
I just have one question, Kim. At that 1.5 level with the additional services, does that knock off some other concerns for nursing?
So you're talking about the badge locator?
Yeah.
So we talked about that kind of at length. We talked about it in Joe and I, senior leadership as well. You know, like, is it a value add? So what does it look like? You know, and I think you see a lot of these, like the badge locators in really big organizations where there's multiple floors, multiple wings. You know, I don't know how, if it would really add that much to like employee safety wise. A lot of times you have the badge locator specifically. So when you have these big systems or patients say, well, I was here and nobody ever came in my room for hours. You can go back and track that. I checked with Gail. She didn't feel like there was a lot of complaints that came through about people not coming into rooms. But I mean, that, you know, could it be used as a safety feature? Could you know where everybody's at the same time? It also could make employees uncomfortable because you know where they're at all the time, you know? And so, you know, so we kind of looked at that and we did ask the question again, if we could add that at a later date, which we cannot, we could, but it would require the opening the ceiling again to put the anchor points in.
I'm just thinking if you approach a point in time where you do want to add that, would that be, you know, would it be more strategic to do it now versus later and costly?
Right, through the chair, we talked about that too, like what's the thought of us adding it? And, you know, like what's the chances of us adding it in later? And, you know, part of it was the reasons I discussed, you know, you see it in a lot of larger systems. The other part was to try to get the quote down, because the second part of this, which we can add later, which I didn't include in this, is the little, I can't remember what it's called, but they call it Scotty. But it's a little kind of badge this big that you sign in and out of. It has a hands-free. It also has a duress button on it. That duress button wouldn't interact house-wide like our current Sarah systems do. It would just be on the unit. But eventually I would like to move to that because it would solve a lot of our problems with the communications and our virtual sitter and those things. And again, being hands-free, you can open up the channel. So if you're in a room with somebody, say you're cornered and they're yelling at you, you can't open up the channel for everybody to hear it. And so they know so you can say, Mr. So-and-so, please calm down, or, you know, and then people know where you are. Everybody can hear the speed broadcast, which is I think a good safety feature. And it's also helpful for them to have it. We've been trying to figure out a communication fix for virtual sitter. Because if someone's watching a patient on the virtual sitter monitor and then they start getting out of bed, everybody's in rooms. Now it's like, okay, you got to try to call people and say, quick, go, because the virtual sitter can't leave to go help. And this would be one thing that they could activate and say, hey, you know, room, whatever is attempting to get out of bed. And they could call the nurse or they see me individually.
And what's the additional cost of that?
Question.
It's another 220,000, I believe.
Thanks.
So how do you understand the source of funds for this?
These are the funds that are appropriated through the CIP process. So we did that $3 million appropriation through budget.
Yeah,
And this
so
is,
part of that amorphous kind of capital budget.
yeah, it's replacing facility pieces that have come to the end of their life. And since it engages engineering from the city level, it runs through that side of that.
So with all the other things that we have on the plate, where does that leave us with respect to that budget authorization?
We're just starting to get into that 3 million, but we haven't started assigning projects to that because we have leftovers from last year. And so I'd have to look at Lisa's spreadsheet. We're barely dipping our toe into that 3 million right now.
Okay.
So with that being said, because it's kind of where I was going with the funding source business. With that being said, if we haven't touched, we're just dipping into $3 million now, well, I guess we're halfway through the year. Would it be?
We're a month into the year.
Yeah, we're a month in.
Yeah. Let's get a little excited. Really looking forward to the end of the year. Would it be more advantageous for us to do the whole system, you know? Because like Kim said, eventually maybe we're gonna want to come back and put the Scotty in or the system in. Would it be more advantageous right now to spend the $500,000?
So the thought process, so what we're asking for is just a replacement, which is an absolute requirement for our patients. So phase two, what she talked about, the Scotty piece, we're actually putting that on our wish list for the rural health transformation grants. Our hope is this is a way to move healthcare forward. It's transformative for us. Will we get to better implement that fund that instead? So it's not like we don't want that. We're just hoping for another funding mechanism to get to that instead.
Or can you have ceilings up and roofs up and put it?
They don't have to rerun cable once they rerun well, they'd have to rerun cable for the locator if we decide to go that. And I'm still,
But the locator is gonna be on your wish list. The Scotty's gonna be on your.
Scotty's in the wish list and they don't have to rerun cable for that.
Ready to make a motion.
Yes. Just
What
one quick question.
and Dr. Ross.
What is the life of this then moving forward? Probably not as long as this one was.
I'll have to look and verify, but I think it's at least 15 to 20. I mean, it's designed to be able to have things added to it, you know.
Great.
To upgrade, yeah.
I was just gonna say, I like their thought process. It sounds like it's really been evaluated and I'm in favor.
I move the Joint Planning and Finance Committee of Bartlett Regional Hospital to approve the Phil Ron Baxter quote as presented, move it to full board of directors for approval.
Second.
That's your second. Any objections? No comments? All right, that motion move forward to the board meeting. All right, at this point now, I will turn this over to Max.
Thank you, Kenny, and I'll turn it over to Angela.
We have the whole packet that is available that has the significant amount of detail in there. I did want to draw attention to a couple of graphs that have changed in the appendices. So Sharon, that would be page 14. So this used to be a stacked graph, which does not give you a lot of detail in the numbers. So you couldn't tie out the numbers from the various sub-data below it. So we changed this to a line graph, so this is a little easier to read and understand. Just wanted to let you know that we had changed that one. And then on 20, we also changed that from a stack graph to a line graph so that you can tie those numbers to the data. So it's just a little bit easier to read.
Yeah, sorry, I just saw the text. Lisa's having a hard time hearing. I don't know if anybody else is. Just have to raise our voice.
Lisa, can you hear us now?
Yeah, it actually had gotten better since I sent that, so thank you.
Thank you. And then on page 21, we actually added a graph. So the bottom graph shows the original historic detail, which is actual patient numbers and resident inpatient days for Wellflower Court. The graph above it is an average. So you get to see that streamlined data. The purpose of this change was to flatten out any day changes between months. So for example, February has 28 days and then March has 31 days. And it looks like we have a significant uptick in inpatient days in March versus February, but it's not. It's really the days affecting the totals. So we were showing there's no more coffee in the coffee cup. That it is, you know, if you want to scroll up just to make sure that we are increasing inpatient days, but it is at a more steady and consistent rate. So that was the purpose of that. We'll leave the actual data on the bottom for a couple months, and then we'll just flip over to the average data. If there's any questions on those. Otherwise, I'll go to the key highlights.
I just have a comment. I appreciate teaching in this format so much. You can't imagine my joy when I flip it back in.
Glad to hear it.
I can't wait for Hal to see this.
I don't have historical reference. Is that good? No comment.
For the statistics.
Okay, moving on. So key highlights from the preliminary June financials, and these are preliminary because we have not finished our audit work and we're continuing through that process. And then we will have an updated final once that is. So preliminary June, we had a net gain for the month of June of 396,000. That is primarily due to an increase in patient days for med-surg of 11.1% and CCU of 3.6% over prior month. We are continuing to review the contractuals and bad debt as part of our year-end work. So we'll have an update on that. Just a note of follow-up on the April and May errors that were noted for home health and hospice, where there was some catch-up on revenue that needed to occur. That did occur in June. We have implemented those remediation procedures to make sure that we catch that and it becomes a monthly cadence. The home health and hospice total for June, which includes April through June revenues, was 138,000. For reference, that's about 46,000 a month on average. On hospice, it was 131,000. That is an average of 44,000 a month in revenue. So that is now all caught up for year end. Moving on to expensive contract labor continued to run high. It was 938,000 unfavorable to budget. That is down from May, which was $1 million unfavorable to budget. So slight improvement there. We have a positive operating margin year-to-date June of 4.27%, which is still exceeding our 3% target. So overall ending on a positive note. And the total net positive margin for year-to-date June ending fiscal year 25 on preliminary numbers is 8.3 million. Prior year was a negative 7.3 million. So that is a $15.5 million swing. Nice to be the bearer of good news. AR did increase slightly in June by 1.7 million. And that is primarily driven by volumes and the seasonality of the business. Yes, ma'am.
You like it? So you mentioned that it was 7.2 million last year, or is it against budget? Because the column header is budget.
It would have been against budget. Excuse me. Thank you for correcting. Yeah, that is. Any questions? Anything else I can answer?
Question. I'm not a specific numbers guy, more broadly. Home health care and hospice, very popular programs.
Yeah.
So just roughly, what are we losing monthly on those programs? Just ballpark.
So if we look at the financials for home health and hospice,
And the trend also.
You have 59, Sharon?
page
Oh, I'm sorry, that was
17 in
on the
total. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. So if we look at their year-to-date actual, now this does not include a contractual rate applied here, but the net loss just on these financials with revenue and direct expenses is 187,000 on health. On hospice, it's a negative, it is a net loss of 7,500. But those are revenues and direct expenses.
Let's do the caveat though on that.
Yeah.
It will not look that good in 26 because we will be doing allocation. So this is just the net revenue and expense. It doesn't include any overhead, all the things that we have to do to support it that need to be costed into that line. So you'll see it look different for 26. And then we also have some headway on contractuals or.
Well, the contractuals aren't applied on these financials.
They're not.
So that'll also be another component that's added in effort as we start to normalize these financials into a standard practice.
Got the gross in there. So we were doing, when Angela and I met to go over this, we were around 250 loss, I think, wasn't it?
On hospice.
On hospice, yeah. So that's in the ballpark of where we are. That's before any community support. So JCF and, the end of life group. And it's, potentially there's some, some work we can do to continue to improve that through outreach and, creating longer terms of stay and that kind of thing, John, that will increase the revenue, net revenue without having, an offsetting cost, expense that, that they're working on. But I think it's really important. I'm glad you brought this up. I was going to bring it up later, but the hospital needs to be prepared with the fact that we will have on hospice small losses going forward. And the key is number one, getting everybody to wrap their heads around the fact that this is an important program, but it doesn't pay for itself. And then secondly is that they're small, relative to the high size of the hospital. We're not talking about Aurora Behavioral Health. We're not talking about Rainforest Recovery. We're talking about what should be, in the hundreds with the community support, $100,000 to $150,000 range, which should be supportable. So that's what thank you. And we need to focus on that because it needs to have the, I'm very interested in setting a tone around hospice and home care that just embraces the fact that we've got an important program that doesn't necessarily pay for itself. And we just need to, operate the hospital smartly enough that this small kind of non-traditional healthcare thing that we decided to keep as a board, we have a very long-term commitment.
And that's was my point was that this what distinguishes us from search is that any program that doesn't have a profit, they will cut. And this is a very popular program amongst the medical community and the what I have found in the Juno community. But I just wanted to make sure how much we're losing. So if it's these low hundreds, then
I think we need to, if we say that it should be less than 200 with the community support, and we still have, where we end up landing with JCF and the end of life group is, I think, still to be written. And with their support, hopefully we'll be in that $200,000 range. Maybe better, but it shouldn't be worse. Yeah. And then that's hospice. Remember, they operate together because we also have the home care component. Could you speak to that a little bit, Angela, about where your expectation for 26, for example, for home health were fully allocated?
Sure. So home health is currently showing a loss of 187 at the end of the year. We expect with contractual on that, it's probably in the fours in a loss perspective. We're continuing to do cost controls and make sure we've mitigated that on every aspect. Once we finish the year-end work, we'll have actual contractuals to apply to that. We can give a more firm number, but we'll continue to look at that and see how we can garner more support for it. Home health typically doesn't have the same level of support as hospice. So we'll continue to educate on that program as well and see where we can raise some offsetting funds and minimize the negative impact to the hospital, but still manage it appropriately and make it a community service.
So, Max,
Sorry.
I just want to, so just to clarify this, I could do it too. This is something we have kind of touched on frequently. So this is something when we approved these programs that we knew that we were going to suffer these minor losses, and this is something that we as a board approved for our community. And I think Max is spot on by saying it's really important that we keep continuing in the area of what these programs are to this community, even though hospice has probably gathered more support than home health care is, but home health is just.
Yeah. And we're going to keep it visible. We're going to keep, this will be this report that and Angela's continuing to work on. As she said, there's still work to be done here for sure. But it's also important that we kind of let that air out, so everybody knows. So what I don't want to have is some surprise a couple of years down the road where, we're losing money at this thing again. I want people to just understand that we're going to have, these losses and we just have to figure them out.
And Max, we're about where we suspected we were going to be, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were a little late starting on billing last year, I think, a little bit of it was, right? I mean, FY 25 fiscal year isn't really the complete answer. We'll have a better answer, I think, 26. So,
Just, if I could, two comments. It sounds like if we get in trouble, it might be on the home healthcare side. But I think we should almost, and not only make it open, but almost publicize the fact that we are supporting, because we have the reputation of cutting a bunch of programs to get fiscally responsible.
Yeah.
We've done.
right.
But now, broadly, the community can now realize, look, we are still doing some really important things here in town.
Yeah, and when we approved it as a board a year ago, it was with the idea that it was a 5-year kind of commitment of a turnaround, right? So we're, Joe, it's good to see Joe and Kim over there nodding their head because, we all know that there's work to be done on that. And it wasn't just a 1-year thing, this is a long-term commitment.
Mr. Troy?
Yeah.
This is a public meeting and we're discussing it, but most of the community does not take a deep dive into our minutes and watch our recordings. So I would like to see us regularly make that commitment in, not only in our social media, but in our board meetings as well.
Yeah.
You're just, when you discuss the finance committee meeting or this joint committee meeting, that we periodically reinforce that commitment so that the community continues to hear it and not go sideways if somebody mentions a loss.
While we're here, do you want to talk about your service on that board?
I've been meeting with the
you're
Foundation
not
for End of Life.
Yeah.
I am not on the board. I've been meeting with Foundation for End of Life to work on some hospice funding and start relationship building on that perspective. And we'll also be reaching out to Junior Community Foundation.
That's still on my to-do list.
We all have lots to do.
That was on me, yeah.
So working on those angles to continue relationship building and keeping those programs forefront on their mind and seeing what additional funding opportunities there may be where we can have joint collaboration on that. So those activities.
Any other questions on the or any things you want to cover? I've got a couple of questions I want to get out on the table on the finance. So,
No, I think I've got everything covered I wanted to speak to.
anybody else have any questions on the financials? So would you go to the first of the cool new graphs from Sharon? And so can you talk about the drop off that we're seeing on health? So the second curve from the top is mental health. And can you kind of help us understand why we're seeing such a decline there? It's the other graph, Sharon. There you go. Second one from the, no, Sharon had it right. Angela.
Yeah, it's like.
So, and maybe that's something that Kim could add, but we've seen this drop. If you look at the data. So we were in March in mental health, we were at 274, then we went to 171, 163, and 148. So what's going on with that?
But through the chair, staffing has been incredibly hard to try to get staffing. Some of that is the housing challenge. So we've had a couple of people say yes, they would come, they couldn't find housing, or they could find housing that picks up a dog. So they backed out on that. It's just been incredibly hard to find staffing. We are, I think, on the upswing. We had last week, we were up to, I think, 10 patients up there. And then it came back down. Not unusual in the summer that it decreases a little bit. I imagine as we get into winter, that number will increase. And our goal is to, again, have, be able, I don't want to say to have it full because that means people are mentally ill and need help, but we want to be able to have the staffing in place to maintain a full unit. And so we are on the upswing of that. It's just trying to get people in. Background checks take a while. They don't have an Alaska nursing license. That takes a while. And then of course the housing. So I know HR is tracking the, people who have accepted and then rescinded because of housing, and we're keeping track of that. So we are working on that, with all of our travel companies that we have, to see if we can even get, but even that has slowed down for all of our areas to try to find just staffing in general, so. But we are actively working at it. I look at it every day and talk
Yeah,
to
I'm
staff,
sure.
and work with Dr. DeJoya. He also would like to see that, the capability to increase our census as well.
So secondary to this is, you know how we received our dish funds for the mental health unit, was the per diem rate. And so this year we tapped those out early on. So we actually ran out of those funds probably going back to March, I think. And so the decrease in census, why it might seem negative to us, we had a cutoff in that funding mechanism that would have been us either way if we would have continued to take those patients. And so I think we have reimbursable services in this way that we would have been pushed down to either way. So from a financial standpoint. And so we are working with the state trying to, because there's two buckets of money right now. The one bucket of money we just tear right through, and the other bucket of money we hardly even touch. So we're trying to say, just make it one bucket or make them interchangeable so we can access those dollars. But that's another one of the struggles we're working on.
Is that a state approval process issue or what's up with that?
I'm not sure. So last year when we went through it, we told them that we were going to have this problem this year. So when the big problem is when they switched to DRGs.
Yeah.
And so we had this big uncompensated, it used to be per diem, that's DRG, so we have Medicaid saying come close to covering costs. So basically they created the second bucket that we tore through. And since basically everyone has Medicaid up there, we have very little of that uncompensated care. So we asked like push it all to this bucket because we'll use it all over here. But they only let us move a little bit. And so we have more data this year, so we're going up with the request, say, make this, 900 days in this one, 120. So we don't need 400 days in this bucket. So we are working with the state on that.
Okay. And what's the likely outcome, Joe? I mean, do you feel confident that you're going to have a good landing spot, or is that?
With the state of Alaska, I don't feel confident. I'm just going to fight and hope for the best.
Yeah.
When they come back, I might be able to pick up the chain, we'll see where it comes from. It doesn't make sense to me because these are federal pass-through dollars. They should just be moving.
Shouldn't be an issue,
So I don't know why it's an issue. But the state's funding that way.
And there's no match from them. This is direct pass-through.
But yeah, it is dish funds, these are direct pass-through dollars.
Petitions reauthorized, right?
Yeah.
What? Through what period?
Let's go back and look. I know it's funded for this year. I don't know what that subsequent years up there.
This FY.
This FY.
Okay. The other thing I did want to highlight, if we could go back up to page, just to get it on everybody's radar. Go up to page. It's the first page of numbers in the packet. Here. I'm looking at the packet. Not the word packet. Yeah, there you go. So it's a little hard to read. Scroll down to the bottom. So that you'll notice that the fifth column from the left, the bottom line, has that big 7,615,246. That was the final June amount that got booked last year. And that was a big component of that was the PERS adjustment that is made every year. And so that and the final contractual number, which was the other piece, it's a little bit further up the page. Both of those are outstanding. And Angela touched on that, but we could have these big swings still. We still don't, it's nice to see the $8.3 million bottom line year to date in there, but that number is not the final.
Not the final.
And we don't know what the GASB 6871 adjustment, the PERS adjustment is yet, right?
No, the auditors actually do that as part of their scope of work. So until they have finished that, it's one of the last things they do because it's predicated on a lot of different factors and reports.
Yeah.
Then we won't have that till the very end.
It's a book adjustment. I mean, when it's all said and done, it has no cash effect. It's just purely book. It's between employee benefits and these huge long PERS liabilities that are out there. So
And based on our conversation, we are going to push that down to a non-operating line.
Oh, good.
So we will have a report that shows you what operations did, and then any of those extraneous adjustments, like the PERS adjustment, will be below that.
That's great. That's good to hear. And you'll do that comparatively for your reports that we're looking at.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's all I had. Okay, so then the next thing on the agenda, unless there's any other questions for Angela, is housing, Joe.
Housing. So Angela and Chad and I met earlier, trying to go through kind of what the need is. It was earlier this week, so we we're kind of behind the ball on this. Kind of outlines what we need in total housing. Do you have those numbers, Chad, by chance? Or not?
Service a deer in the headlights.
It's what we kind of chatted about is we know what we need, we know what we can get in rentals, and then the third piece of it is what's gonna cost to potentially build this. We kind of put that, I didn't put a lot of pressure on it, because me and Max started having a discussion, we're gonna do a walkthrough with Bartlett House building and have Wade and Jensen come do a look at that. And so, the idea is if he looks at that and says, yes, we can start, there is potential for construction, get the idea what that cost would be. And then the ROI would be kind of what it costs to build that versus what these rentals cost over a 30-year period. And then bring that back to the board for decision point. In relation to that, with the rural health transformation grant monies, we did throw some numbers on there for housing issues.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so, in talking with they said there are some capital projects that will get approved. So we are plugging a few of them on that line, just in hopes. We threw that one on there. We know that our ORs are out of date, so we're plugging some numbers on for that. And then some more transformation stuff that we're hoping to move forward in the future.
You know, just as maybe a first kind of awareness for the board and starting with this committee, these committees, walk us through kind of what we're talking about as far as Bartlett House conceptually. It's a conceptual plan right now. It's got no legs.
Yeah, conceptually is what we do is we move it out. So that north, I guess it'd be north,
Yeah.
at the north side of it. It's kind of an L shaped. We make it a long L and push it out kind of those parking spaces. We do have a reefer there that acts as backup fridge and backup warm. I think it's what it is. We'd have to find a home for that. They put gravel there, a few parking spots. So we'd have to move some of those, but the land is level. It looks like it would support it, but being able to create hopefully somewhere between 6 and 8 apartment style units that we use equally between staffing and patients.
One bed.
One, maybe a couple 2-bedroom ones. We have 2 2-bedroom apartments at this point, so a few bigger units.
Well, potentially you could do more than 6 or 8 too.
Yeah,
That's part of what Wayne
that's
said.
what we need Wayne for.
Right, yeah.
So about like, what can we actually do in this space? It's a little bit deeper than where the building is, so you could make it a little bit deeper and a little bit longer. Potentially more doubling at the current square footage to be biased. And then high level, some of the discussions we had, building, is it probably something Bartlett's good at, or CBJ? And so is there a mechanism where we can leverage the foundation to help them? So we're exploring that.
It would be their asset.
Yeah, it would be their asset. And
So we
so,
would provide them funding to do that.
yes. So we've discussed, can Bartlett give the foundation a grant to help build this potentially? There is, when you look through how CBJ allocates and does grants, it seems like there is a mechanism to do grants to nonprofits through CBJ. And so
You're absolutely.
we have to make the assumption that apply to us. Or be CBJ to them, just think about it.
But the timing on this is this would be something that we do through our normal budget process, right? We're not going to do anything unusual, so it'll be something we'll incorporate in the 26 budget.
Yeah, try to get some high level numbers put together, start working the budget, with the caveat being if the federal government comes back and says, hey, get something shovel ready. We have X amount of dollars to buy the project faster.
Yeah.
So this, yeah, Kenny, this is just a off the wall question here. Because you do all this recruiting and people tell you no or tell us no because they can't find housing. They also can't find housing for the pets. Is Bartlett House allow pets?
We actually discussed that. Do you have an answer?
We are taking it case by case. So we thought maybe, if we did that, then could we ask for, they pay more maybe for pet deposit? What does that look like?
A lot of people pay X amount, extra dollars every month for the cut, right? So
So we looked at that for case by case basis.
And it's just, limiting the type and size. of
Case by case. Well, it's tough too. I mean, you could have a German Shepherd that's gonna be more gentle than a Chihuahua, right? So trying to limit that size.
For example, we had us interim OR director who, stayed at the two bedroom over there and he had it's a Great Dane or little horse basically. But very well, behaved, yeah.
A good horse.
Of course.
Yeah.
Trained horse.
Okay, so the housing is really just informational. Anything more on that, Joe, or any questions for
So
Joe?
keep moving that conversation forward.
Anybody that wants to, we're meeting Wayne at 1:30 across the way over here. Anybody wants to come? Okay, we've done nurse colony, committee comments and questions.
I would just like to say that I think the barbecue was a huge success. Even with all the flooding that was going on, I still saw lots of positiveness, which I thought was great to see.
Yeah, it was fun. Our family did, people did love it.
I agree. OR crew, that I talked to loved it. Sounds great.
We identified some spelling issues and some alignment.
That sign is now living in my office.
Dr. Rasser pointed out it was misspelled.
We might have misspelled patient.
May have said patient.
I did, yeah.
I thought that sounded more of.
I have it up in my office, so. Good job, Bobby.
It wasn't Hal that found it?
No, Dr. Master.
Dr. Rasser. He pulled it.
Back to seriousness, Chris has a question or comment.
Sorry, I just wanted to revisit the sobering center discussion. Where did that land?
And so that's a complicated question, right? So we kind of,
Oh, we didn't.
I heard you
It's
sigh.
Still here.
going back, so with the transition of leadership with GHS, the cities came back to us, basically said, hey, they're off the table right now. So what alternatives can we bring forward? With obvious savings at the Paul renovation being the option that's on the table. We had some requests on how they used our RRC space. So we have I consider a high-end orthopedic clinic in there. We want to drop people banging on that back door, screaming, or as they release them into the parking lot, harassing patients or playing in wildfire port. We made some proposals and they came back with that. Both our proposals were not structures for them. And that they were going to take it back to the assembly for discussion. So I circled back with the I'm like, this is a conversation. We can't really work through this. That happened on Friday before the flood, and that we have yet to receive a response.
Okay.
I also suggested some other properties in the city as proposals, because there is a commercial piece of property for sale that's 200,000 less than the renovation for St. Vincent de Paul. My guess is they'll come back and say that no one in that community wants this in there. So they're gonna push it back to us. I did it as a point of, like, it's a medical like setting. You're doing the same thing to us, how's this different? That's my thing.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for the city to respond.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, anything more? Great. It is 12:58, we're adjourned.
It went halfway up the yard.